request Professor Surya if you would like to introduce Dr. Monika to the group, because you know her well, so maybe few words.
So I think without any exaggeration, I would say that Monika is one of the researchers in the field of wisdom, which has really marked the field by her huge contribution. And this is what I will say. I will not enter into all her background. She's now at the University of Florida in Miami. And she's
Nope,
also
not in Miami, Gainesville.
Oh yeah, sorry, excuse me. Yeah, absolutely right. And she's also a member of the board of advisor of our Center for Wisdom and Leadership, and we always just love to discuss with her because of her clarity in thinking and the depth that she's bringing to everything. So all the rest you can find on the website, but she has been associated with us for a long time. And really, all our PhD students that are there now, who you see, I mean, it's a really unique opportunity, and I would like you to take this advantage to be connected with somebody of this stature. Okay, so that will be my presentation.
Thank
Then
you.
you'll see more about.
Thank you, Surya, and thank you so much for inviting me and to give this presentation. This is actually something that is relatively recently, so I have started to be interested in wise organizations, but it had been brewing for quite some time. After I got invited by the Lila group, and the Lila group stands for Something Learning, and helping organizations to dig deeper and find meaning and having the humanity approach. And they invited, at one year the topic was wisdom, and they invited me and said, can you present something about wise organizations? And I said, no, not really, because I've never studied this. He said, yeah, you have, but you have looked at, what wisdom is and what knowledge is. Why don't you use something like the similar approach, the difference between knowledge and wisdom, and apply it to organizations? And I said, well, okay, I can try that. And that was my first kind of putting my toes into the water of wise organizations. And as I said, this has been many years ago, and now I've really become more interested in kind of developing this, because particularly I feel that we need wise organizations to help to solve some of our societal problems. We cannot wait for the political sphere and politicians to solve the problems for us, because apparently it's not happening. So we need the initiative from wise organization to initiate a paradigm shift of what organizations are or should be, and how they should serve society. So anyway, so let me start and tell you a little bit about what I have been studying. And for many years I of course have been studying personal wisdom. And when you look at the literature, there are really, personal wisdom is good for you. There are many benefits. So in most of the wisdom researchers, if you look into the writings, they would all say, yes, wisdom is good. This is why we should develop it, because wisdom is considered beneficial not just for the individual, but it's also beneficial for others, because if you come in contact with a wise person, this is good. Yeah, that typically feels good, and they have positive influences on others. but then also it is beneficial for the larger society. And if you look at the literature, and again, it's not completely for all wisdom measures, but if you compare personal wisdom with the so-called general wisdom measures, giving advice to other people, whereas personal wisdom means you are actually wise. So you're not just wise for others, or you're theoretically wise, you know a lot, what the Baltus approach, wisdom-related knowledge, that doesn't necessarily by itself lead to positive benefits. But if you are wise, that means if you can apply this knowledge to yourself and live accordingly, then personal wisdom is correlated with flourishing, which is psychological well-being. It's called psychological well-being. And Carol Riff defines this as a combination of purpose in life, mastery, autonomy, an orientation toward personal growth, self-acceptance, and then also emotional competence and positive relations with others. And it is also related to subjective well-being. And that's typically defined as life satisfaction, happiness, and positive affect. Now, here are the questions that I want to kind of try to answer in my presentation. This is, how is personal wisdom defined? Is it possible that organizations can possess wise characteristics? And what is a wise organization? And then, do wise organizations in fact facilitate the flourishing and well-being of employees? So I want to start with the three-dimensional wisdom model that I developed, but it is really based on research by Clayton and Biren. So Vivian Clayton, in her dissertation in the 1970s, what she did, she gave young adults, middle-aged adults, and older adults, basically asking them, what do you think are characteristics of wisdom? And then she collected these characteristics and then gave another group of young adults, middle-aged adults, and older adults this list of characteristics, and also the added wise and myself and an older person or something. And then these people, what they were asked to do is to put the similarities between all these pairs, all similarities between all these characteristics. And then they did a multidimensional scaling analysis, and they came up with these 3 dimensions of wisdom: cognitive, reflective, and what they called affective. And when I started on my wisdom research, and I really started thinking about this in 1990, so it's a long time ago now, and this was for my dissertation, I wanted to, kind of find out what is the secret to happiness in old age. And of course there are these objective indicators, subjective health always matters a lot. Being, having enough money to pay for all these things, this matters. But I also thought there is some kind of psychological ingredient, and somehow I thought, well, it's wisdom. But I didn't know at that time that, how would you measure wisdom? And so I came across this research by Clayton and Biren, and I said, well, even so you might not be able to measure wisdom directly, but these combinations of cognitive, reflective, and affective, this makes so much sense to me, and I'm sure you can measure these dimensions of wisdom. And I happen to have a data set where I could actually do this, and it worked very well. It actually turned out that that this combined measure of the cognitive, reflective, and affective characteristics was highly related to life satisfaction in old age for these older adults. So later on, I changed the affective component. I called it the compassionate component, and I did it because people would either interview me or think, okay, affective component, that means emotions, right? Or reviewers of my papers would misinterpret this, okay, affective dimension just means emotion. No, it doesn't mean just any emotions. The affective component means particular emotions, and it really means sympathy and compassion for other people, and actually including yourself, for others, also including yourself. And therefore I call it the compassionate dimension, so that it causes less confusion. All right, so this is a little bit of a history where I come from and where this measure comes from. So what are these three dimensions? The cognitive dimension means an understanding of the intrapersonal and interpersonal aspects of life, meaning interpersonal, understanding myself, right? Interpersonal. All the saints have said, know thyself, so yes, that is really important. Understanding yourself, really understanding yourself with all your faults and weaknesses, but also your strengths. And then the interpersonal aspects of life is how to relate to other people, and particularly how to relate to difficult people, that might not be easy to relate to. And also, what's part of this dimension is a desire to know the truth. Even so, wise people know that we will never get to understand or to really comprehend the absolute truth, truth with a capital T. There's this desire to get closer to the truth, to what's actually going on, to understand the deeper meaning of life, ability to comprehend the true or deeper meaning of phenomena, events, and of life. And to get to this deeper understanding, we need the reflective dimension. The reflective dimension pretty much just means, looking at phenomena and events from different perspectives, but also looking at yourself from an outside perspective. So this is a self-awareness, and to overcome subjectivity and projections, meaning to basically overcome the tendency that we all have to a certain degree, that to blame other people or external events if things happen that we don't like. So we don't take responsibility for that, but we, very quickly blame, oh, this happened because, this person did this, or this happened, and that's nothing to do with me. And so by engaging in this reflection, self-reflection, we maybe learn more about ourselves. This is this understanding ourselves better, and then also can accept that we are not perfect, and that we have some negative tendencies, and then become more tolerant toward the negative tendencies of other people, because yes, I think it's easy for us to see the negative tendencies of other people, right? I mean, this is what Jesus said. Oh, so the big branch of in the eyes of other people, but not the splinter in your own eye. And then Jesus times, and so it's kind of part of the human condition. But by doing this reflection, if we can accept, yes, I'm not perfect, yes, I have these weaknesses, that might make us more tolerant toward the weaknesses and the imperfections of others, and therefore we can develop sympathy and compassion for other people, and also including ourselves. It says, yeah, I'm not perfect, but that's perfectly all right, because I'm only human. All right, so here's my proposal, that we can combine the three-dimensional wisdom model together with self-determination theory, STD, and then this new model can be applied to organizations. And I have to thank Laurent Ledoux for this idea. I mean, I had self-determination theory in mind, but really to apply it to organizations. And I was thinking about this is, yes, this could be combined. This actually makes sense to me. Okay, so what is self-determination theory? This comes from research by Dacey and Ryan. And what they say is that humans have an inherent psychological need for competence, autonomy, and relatedness. So if we look at competence, competence is the desire for personal development. So not just to, to remain stagnant, to stay still, but to continue to grow, to develop, to learn more, to become a better human person. But also a sense of control, efficacy, and particularly purpose in human endeavors. So that what I do matters to a certain degree. It doesn't have to change the world completely, but it can change something, some little aspect of life. It matters. It's not just, nobody cares what I'm doing. So autonomy relates to voluntary chosen self-directed behavior. So not other people tell me what I need to do, but I choose it voluntarily. So I have this is related to, I have some control over what I'm doing. And then relatedness, we are social beings. We are not individuals. We are really social beings. And that is, we have a need for social affiliation, inclusion, and significant social connections, which is actually very interesting right now. We're doing a social experiment. I have the feeling that people move more and more of their social connections online. So they are connected on the internet, but they don't really know anymore how to connect with each other. They're texting each other while sitting in the same room, right? I mean, it's like they don't know how to talk to each other anymore. And one of the things I noticed is with my students, that I come to the class and nobody is talking. In the past, people would talk before class, or we have a break and they would talk to each other. And now I come to the class completely eerie quiet, and everybody is on the phone and doing something. And that's really scary for me. I'm teaching a new class this semester, and I'm so happy. I'm coming to class and people are actually talking to each other. I'm so happy about this, really. Even so it might take a while to settle people down, but it's not this eerie quiet of a whole lecture room, with who knows how many people and nobody says anything. I mean, this is scary, right? So, all right. So anyways, I do think we need this relatedness, and one of what people are saying, social isolation is becoming a real health problem, particularly among older adults. Okay, so we have the three-dimensional wisdom model and then self-determination theory, and if we combine this, oh no, I want to show this is so nice, so I have to do this again. All right, here we go, right? Took me a while to figure this one out. So anyway, so we combine this, right? And then we have this combination. And so this is what it is, what I think, But before we get to this, before I explain this model, this combined model, I should emphasize that a wise organization is based on a strong culture of collective phronesis. Okay, so this is why it works or it might not work. Wise organization needs wise leaders that establish a strong culture of collective phronesis. And what is it? It's based on collectively shared and practiced ethical and moral values. So it needs a foundation of practical, ethical, and moral values. And if they don't exist, if people feel that they can exploit each other, if they feel that cheating is fine, it's just good business practice or survival of the fittest, and it doesn't matter if you break ethical and moral values, then it doesn't work. So it needs this really strong foundation that people treat each other, like the golden rules, how they wanted to be treated, and adhere to ethical and moral values. And there is where wise leaders come in. Wise leaders have to model this. And this is really coming a lot from Monika, but also from David's research. So wise leaders know what is ethically good for the organization and society, and they don't just know it, but they also act accordingly. They create a shared higher purpose, not just to make as much money as possible, but a purpose beyond this, beyond making money and being successful in terms of profit. They motivate people to contribute to the common good related to this higher purpose. The higher purpose is related to some kind of common good, and then they motivate people to contribute to this. They facilitate a community of learning, mutual understanding, trust, and caring. So there is a community of continuing to learn, continuing to grow, but also to care for each other. And they promote the development of wisdom to the organization, particularly through role modeling, mentoring, apprenticeship, and training programs. So role modeling is so important, because if you see the leader is just, talking the talk, but they're not doing the walk, it's not working, right? The leader has to be the exemplar of a moral person, of a wise leader, and behave accordingly, because otherwise it's just empty talk, and then people will not trust you. They also support and motivate employees to do their best work, which fosters employees flourishing, to do their best work, but always in relation for a good, common good, for a higher purpose. Because doing your best work to cheat other people out of their money, by selling them, useless products, it doesn't really motivate people. It motivates people, if they actually know this is a noble cause. And they understand that organizational success depends on the cooperation and shared work-related purpose of all employees at every level, not just at the leadership level, and then the rest can just be discarded, as, just piece of machinery. You put them here, you put them there, and it doesn't really matter, we don't really care, what they are. They might as well be robots. If you treat people like robots, it's true, then they might as well be robots. Then I think it would be better to really put robots there rather than real people. And so in a wise organization, there is a partnership between the organization's leadership and employees based on trust, goodwill, cooperation, and the absence of exploitation. So it's really, let's work on this together to make the best products or services that we can provide. And that requires certain things. So let's go back to our model here. And so what is the combination of the wisdom model and self-determination theory? So I think in a wise organization, in terms of the cognitive wisdom dimension and related to competence, wise organizations search for the deeper purpose and reason for their existence. And I think the deeper purpose and reason for the existence of a wise organization is to provide the best service or product to somehow improve society or improve parts, of society, to contribute to the greater good. So wise organizations desire to become organizations that serve and benefit all stakeholders. All stakeholders means not just the leadership, not just, those who own the company and making as much profit as possible. So it's not just shareholders, but it's also employees and customers. So meaning, giving the customer the best products, not trying to swindle customer out of their money, with worthless products or services, so that I can benefit from it and we don't care, how that customers are exploited, but also clients, suppliers, don't cheat your suppliers, and then the surrounding community, society, and the environment, so a wise organization will make sure that they don't pollute the environment, that they don't exploit the environment in a way that destroys it, or the same with society and the surrounding community, but they will contribute to the well-being and the welfare of the surrounding community as well. They also, in terms of the cognitive dimension and competence particularly, they encourage employees' professional development, continue to learning, continue to grow in their job, but also personal development and growth. And so interestingly, I'm just giving this example at the University of Florida now. They have offered little relaxation classes, stretching classes, strengths building classes from Monday to Thursday at noon. It's over Zoom. You only do it for 15 minutes, which is great because I wouldn't have time to do more otherwise anyway. I just need to get out because I don't want to. So okay. So but it's great. It helps you to relax for 15 minutes at noon, and you do a little bit of exercise during that time. And it's a great idea. It has nothing directly to do with your work, but I think it has something indirectly to do with your work, because for 15 minutes you engage, you improve your health, and that of course gives you the energy then afterwards to work with more enthusiasm maybe. And now it's interesting, the University of Florida is big. It's really big. It's offered to all employees, as far as I can tell, but there are only about, let's say it's under 30 people that participate in this. Yeah, so it's also a question of, who actually takes advantage of these kind of offerings. All right, and then a wise organization elicit in their employees a sense of accomplishment and the feeling that their work makes a positive difference. And this is related to the search for a deeper purpose and reason for existence, because if there exists a deeper purpose, then employees will have a sense of accomplishment and the feeling that their work makes a positive difference. All right, what is the reflective wisdom dimension in autonomy? Well, in wise organization, through reflection, wise organization might realize that short-term goals and successes might not lead to long-term benefits for all stakeholders. Yes, if you exploit your employees, or if you cheat your customers or clients, then you might have a big success in the short run. You may earn a lot of profit in the short run, but not in the long run. In the long run, this will negatively affect your business, and you see this example of Purdue Pharma with oxytocin, what they have, this very powerful pain drug, where they knew early on that this is addictive, and they were still pushing it to physicians, telling them it's perfectly safe to take, and then really getting all these people addicted to these pain medications. And they made a lot of money for quite some time, but in the end now, right, they are disgraced. The Sackler family that owns Purdue Pharma is completely disgraced. Their names are scratched from buildings of museums, and they had to pay a lot of penalty. So in the long run, was it really worth it to make this money in the short run? So wise organizations, they are autonomous enough, through their reflection, they have the guts to pursue long-term goals for the benefit of all. Even so, the prevailing, the prevailing theories, economic theories say, no, you have to be as ruthless as as possible, the survival of the fittest, and if you don't succeed at all costs, you will fail, and wise organizations say, no, I don't believe that, we believe there is another way. So, and because they value autonomy, they also value autonomy in their employees, and they give employees the freedom to accomplish their tasks self-directed. And that might mean to change how things are produced. So this is an example is the automobile industry, where you could, at one point, the workers there were just really pieces of machinery where they just doing wing, 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 or something like this, what an AI could do much better, and eventually did, actually, because they don't get tired. And now the employees in many automobile industries, they do have a little bit more autonomy how they want to do it, or they change from one task to the other, and so that they don't feel like they are just a little piece of machinery. And that, of course, gives them more satisfaction of their work, and also reduces burnout. And because wise organizations value autonomy, and they value reflecting on things, they will provide employees enough time and flexibility to achieve a satisfactory work-life balance, to have enough time to recuperate and to reflect themselves. So it's not just only that their life is not just focused on work, 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 but also that they have a life outside of work, and then they come back to work more energized rather than completely drained. Okay, in the compassionate dimension, this relates clearly to relatedness, right? So because the compassionate dimension is already part of relatedness. So here, wise organizations create a mutually supportive, inclusive, and participatory working environment. So basically, here they know we are all in this together. We all are in the same boat. So they foster an ethical and moral organizational culture, which I already mentioned before, but particularly this is part of this compassionate relatedness dimension, that promotes fairness, appreciation, and respect for all employees, which includes a sense of job security and fair pay. Because if I have the feeling that I can be fired anytime, right, hire and fire, that doesn't give me trust in my organization. Then if I feel that I'm dispensable, and, tomorrow I might lose my job, then, I proactively already look for another job that at least pays me more, or that gives me a little bit better job security. And fair pay is kind of the same thing. If I know that my CEO, makes like millions in salary or stock options, and I, as a lowly employee, have trouble to make ends meet, can barely scrape by, I don't think this is fair. Why should I give then my all to the organizations, rather than do, what is it called right now, the slow quitting, just, do the necessary thing, and then I don't care, because obviously they don't care about me either, right? So if I feel that I'm paid fairly, then I'm much more likely to invest in the organization, and I have this job security. Yes, I will be here, and then it makes sense. Wise organizations also extend the sentiment of compassionate concern and ethical values to all stakeholders. Again, so they will be fair to their clients, customers, suppliers, right? And then if they feel treated, if clients, customers, and suppliers feel treated fairly, then of course they are more likely that they want to work with this organization, that, for example, repeat customers. If I feel this is a good organization, I come back, I give you my business again. If I think this is a shitty organization, they just exploit, or what you produced just fell apart when I bought it, then no, why should I come back to you? That's the end of it. So clearly they build up this loyalty among clients, customers, and suppliers, and then the working relationships work better, and therefore I think it will also benefit the business in terms of being successful. And then finally, WISE organizations consider the organization's impact on the community, society, and the environment. So again, it's not just that let's exploit, the environment because we can, because the law says, that's okay, or, laws haven't been written or haven't been implemented that say, no, you cannot do it. As long as the law says it's okay, we just do it, we just pollute the environment, we ignore our community and society. And a WISE organization wouldn't do this, even without the laws on book, is it ethical, is it moral, or, if it's not, then no, we shouldn't do it, we shouldn't pollute the environment, we shouldn't exploit our community and society. Okay. So these are the hypotheses for the study that I will present you. WISE organizations nurture supportive leadership through hiring and internal cultural practices and have a positive effect on their employees' sense of job fulfillment and their physical and subjective well-being. And supportive leaders then in turn fosters also employees' job fulfillment, and therefore the positive association between WISE organization and employees' job fulfillment is mediated by supportive leadership. And finally, job fulfillment is positively related to employees' physical and subjective well-being, and therefore the positive association between WISE organization and employees' physical and subjective well-being is mediated by both supportive leadership and employees' job fulfillment. So this is a lot, so therefore I show you the model. I show you actually the picture that makes it a little bit clearer. Okay, so here we have WISE organizations, and I predict that WISE organization will have a positive impact on supervisor support, job fulfillment, subjective well-being, and also physical well-being. Physical well-being, we always say, I have no control over physical well-being. It depends on your physical constitution, how much, how well you eat and do exercise. No, I would think that WISE organization also have an effect on physical well-being, but I also think it's mediated this by supervisor support and particularly job fulfillment, because if people feel fulfilled at their job, this is why they feel better about their health, and also particularly better about their subjective well-being. But we know that physical well-being is one of the, or subjective physical well-being, how you feel about your physical health, is one of the most consistent predictors of subjective well-being, so we will control for this effect, when we look at this relationship and this relationship here. All right. So to test these hypotheses, so this is a paper that Bhavna Sharma and I wrote, and it has been accepted by the Business and Professional Ethics Journal. So I'm presenting this research. It's not out yet, but it's forthcoming. Okay, so what did we do? We used secondary data from the Generations of Talent study conducted by the Sloan Center on Aging and Work at Boston College. It was conducted in 2010, so it's some time ago, but I think it's still very valid, all this, the research, and it's just a great data set. So what they did, right, they collected data from 10,082 employees from 24 organizations in 5 industry sectors: tech, consulting, pharma, energy, and finance, and 11 countries. The United States, Mexico, Brazil, United Kingdom, Netherlands, Spain, South Africa, Botswana, India, China, and Japan. So it's a great data set, to really look at it globally. And employees' age ranged from 18 to 91 years with a median age of about 38. 39% were female, 20% had no university degree, 50% had an undergraduate degree only, and 30% had a graduate degree. And then also 35%, so about a third, identified as supervisors in their organization. So how did we measure WISE organizations? Well, the WISE organization was assessed at the organizational level, and I'll explain to you how this worked, as the average of the organization's employee scores on 10 variables. And so for the cognitive wisdom dimension / competence, we had 3 variables or 3 scales, actually 2 scales and 1 variable here. So we had professional development opportunities consisted of 4 items, and the Kronbach's alpha tells you how strongly these items are correlated to each other. The closer to 1, the better. There was 1 item that asked about personal development opportunities, and then 3 items that ask about how accomplished, competent do you feel at your job. And then for the reflective wisdom dimension / autonomy, we had 3 variables again. 5 items that measured autonomy, how they felt, that they had control over their job, that they did it, how they wanted to do things. Flexibility at work, how they could decide when to work, where they had really clear shifts that they had no control over it. And then work-life balance with 4 items. Did they feel that they had enough time for home and, didn't just only had to concentrate on work. And the compassionate wisdom dimension or relatedness dimension had 4 variables. 2 that asked if the respondents felt that they worked in a caring organization. Caring organization meaning that they cared about their own employees, but also cared about society at large. And then relatedness, there were 4 items for non-supervisors. How did they get along with co-workers and so on. And then there were 7 items for supervisors, because 2 items also asked how they get along with their subordinates as a supervisor. And then job security consisted of 2 items, and fair pay and benefits, if they felt that what they earned was fair, and if they got benefits, that consisted of 5 items. And so this is what we did, right, to construct the WISE Organization Index. So first, we constructed the mean of all valid items for a particular variable. Then all variable scales were transformed into 1 to 6 scales, because one had originally 1 to 5 scales or 1 to 3. So we've transformed them all into 1 to 6 scales. And then the average of the 10 variables was computed to construct the WISE Organization Index at the employee level. So, and even so it's an index, they don't necessarily have to hang together these 10 variables. They did, and this is what was visible by the Kronbach's alpha of 0.84. They actually did hang together these 10 variables. And then we conducted a one-way ANOVA with employees' WISE Organization Index as the dependent variable and organization identification number as the independent variable. So basically that means then that each of the 25 organizations was assigned the average WISE organization value of their respective employees. So it's not just one particular employee who's judging their organization, but it's the average of all the employees in an organization. And that meant, right, that first of all, this procedure resulted in a WISE Organization Index that consisted of 24 values for the 24 organizations, ranging from 3.83 to 4.74 on the 1 to 6 scale, right, keeping that in mind. And between 47 and 1,930 of the 10,082 employees, contributed to the average WISE organization rating of their respective organizations. So on average, 420, or the median was like, 308.5 employees on average contributed to this WISE Organization Index. So keeping that in mind, it's not an individual employee measure, it is actually measured at the organization level. And to measure supportive leadership and employee fulfillment, we had just one variable, perception of supportive leadership, which consisted of 7 items. That was the only one that was in the data set, that we only had this one for supportive leadership. But for employee job fulfillment, we had 3 variables, 4 items for organizational commitment, how committed do I feel to the organization, 4 items for engagement at work, and 3 items for just asking about overall work satisfaction. And for physical and subjective well-being, we had 2 items that measured physical well-being. So subjective health, asking about subjective health and physical health problems during the past 4 weeks. Now, one of the things that needs to be, I should mention that physical well-being was not assessed in the 4 tech companies. I do not know why, but it just wasn't. Maybe they thought their employees were so young that it doesn't make sense to ask about physical health. I don't know, but it just wasn't assessed in the 4 tech companies. So that's something to keep in mind. And then subjective well-being was also the average of 2 items. And they were asked, how did respondents feel about their life these days, all things considered? And then what percentage of the time were respondents delighted or strongly satisfied with their life these days? And some of these different surveys in different countries didn't completely, some did the strongly satisfied or strongly dissatisfied, but then in some countries they use these words like delighted, so I don't know, it might be culture or whatever it is. So, a translation issue, I don't know. But so it's not completely always the same, but it's, comparable. And then for a control variable, we included supervisor, being a supervisor, because we think, being a supervisor, they might feel more loyalty toward the organization, female gender, age in years, and education level, from 0, no university degree, or undergraduate degree only, and 2 graduate degree. And then what we did, okay, so for the analysis, so we had 9,130 employees that had valid values on supervisor support, job fulfillment, and subjective well-being for the 24 organizations. And then we had 8,137 employees with valid values on physical well-being as well. And then the other one for the 20 organizations without the tech companies. So keeping that in mind. And then we conducted a Markov chain Monte Carlo multiple imputation in PRELIS to impute demographic missing values. So this was really interesting, I thought, that, okay, one value was missing for supervisor, so what, right? 17 for age, could happen, right? But we had 174 missing values for education level and 172 for gender. What's going on here, right? Of course, we have over 9,000 employees, but still, this is a large number for a simple question of education level and gender. And so I was thinking it was probably, even so these employees were, I think they were promised definitely confidentiality, maybe even anonymity. I think they didn't trust this, so they thought, if I'm honest with my organization, right, really, I'm judging, rating my organization here, I don't want them to find out it was me. And so I think that's why they didn't give the education level and their gender, actually, that it would be harder for other people to find who they were. So they don't completely trusted this, confidentiality, anonymity procedure. And since we are not really concentrating on these variables, I think it's perfectly all right to do multiple imputation because it's not our focus. But I didn't want to throw out all these people. That's why we include them. So for the analysis procedure, we first look at bivariate correlations, and then we conducted 2-level hierarchical linear models with wise organization at the organizational level variable. So this is so basically has 24 values, right? And then all other variables nested within organizations and measured at the employee level. So before we get into the results, I just want to show you the average WISE organization score sorted from highest to lowest. And what's really I think what's really interesting is that the tech companies, at least at that time, they were rated pretty highly. The tech in China a little bit lower, but here, at the top four, it's three of the four tech companies. Now, in the United States, they just fired a lot of people, so that score might change, right? Now, if we were to do this, we do this again, all these tech companies, 10,000 people, Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, all gone, right? So, would we do the survey right now? I'm not so sure about it. But at that time, it's really interesting, and in many of these areas, they were scoring higher than the rest of the sectors in tech. And then the other interesting thing that I found, and they are really different, these are significant differences, that consulting, is so low. Consulting, except for consulting in the Netherlands, they are a little bit, they are scored higher, they are up there. But the rest, particularly, but they're not the other one, only one, the other one is also kind of low. And then particularly India, Brazil, Japan, what's going on here, right? I mean, consulting, aren't you supposed to help other companies to succeed? And your own company is kind of shitty, right? I mean, that doesn't bode well, so that I thought was kind of, disappointing, disillusioning, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, so let's take a look at the bivariate correlations. And what we see first, this is kind of our hypotheses, but just looking at the bivariate correlation. So first of all, WISE organization at the organizational level do have a positive effect on supervisor support, job fulfillment, subjective well-being, and physical well-being. It's a little bit lower for physical well-being, but still the effect is there. And then supervisor support, as predicted, has a positive effect on job fulfillment. And then job fulfillment has a positive effect, not surprisingly, on subjective well-being, but also on physical well-being. And then this is, physical well-being and subjective well-being are related. Yes, we expected that. Now, I just want to show you that this is just for informational purposes, but here is the WISE organization index at the organizational level is related to the WISE organization measure at the employee level. It's 0.29, it's kind of a low medium, not that strongly, but it's not, there's clearly some variation within the organization, how employees feel about their organization, but there is also clearly a relationship. So it's not completely at random. And of course, employees in an organization work at different level, and some are treated better than others, so it's understandable, right, that there is some variation here. And you also, if I had only used, right, if I had used this measure at the employee level, then not surprising that the effects would be much stronger, right? Because then this is now, if I feel that I'm treated well by my organization, yes, I feel much more fulfilled at work. Remember, these scores, the highest score, that you can get perfect correlation is 1, right? It's 1. So a 0.71 is really, really high, I mean, normally we won't get something like this. And then also they feel, oh, my supervisor treats me better. And also the effect that they are on subjective and physical well-being. But we are not doing that. We are looking at the organizational level. So it's really something about the organization, not just at the perception of the employee, how they are treated, and they might be completely misguided, right? So, but the average of all employees, so you would think that misguidedness, kind of levels each other out, so they cannot all be wrong, right? So in this way, the average of so we have a feeling that because we look at the organizational levels, WISE organization, that there must be something to it. It's not just in the imagination of individual employees. Okay, so I'm giving a summary of the mixed model analysis. I did this in of course, in a more separate faction, so I analyzed the individual dependent variables one after another, but this is a summary of the results. And first, that WISE organizations indeed are positively related to employees' perception of supervisory support. And what I want to say here, just to explain this a little bit, the first coefficient here means this is the unstandardized coefficient, which you kind of can ignore for this purpose of the presentation. The second one is the standardized coefficient. And again, the standardized coefficient, the highest would be 1, right? 1. That would be a perfect correlation. So this is kind of more on the weaker side, but it is significant. That means, yes, WISE organizations do have an effect on employees' perception of supervisor support, that they feel supported by their supervisor. And the one on the top is the measure for the 24 organizations, and on the bottom is a measure for the 20 organizations without the tech, because I couldn't include this with the physical well-being. So, and then of course, if you take the tech companies out, the results is a little bit different. So just keep that in mind. But it's still the same. So WISE organizations do have a positive effect on job fulfillment, yes. And WISE organizations have a positive effect on physical well-being, but here this is without the tech companies, not that strong, but still there. And WISE organizations have a positive effect on subjective well-being. So, and this is after controlling for supervisor position, age, education level, and gender. So they are all included as control variables. So then what happens if we include the mediation variables? Well, first of all, you see that, yes, supervisor support, the perception of supervisor support is quite strongly related to job fulfillment. So 0.5, it's a median, but in the social sciences, this is considered quite strong. And you also see once supervisor support is included in the equation, so this effect, the direct effect, becomes insignificant. So it's really mediated by supervisor support. So the one in parentheses was the direct effect without the mediation variable here. And so this is the effect with the mediation variable. So it's no longer significant, meaning it is mediated by supervisor support. And then if you look, job fulfillment does have a direct effect on physical well-being, which we had expected. And then if job fulfillment is included here and supervisor support, then the direct effect again becomes insignificant because it's now mediated by these two variables. And the same here, if we include, so job fulfillment does have quite a strong effect on subjective well-being. But again, if these variables are included, then the direct effect of WISE organization on subjective well-being becomes insignificant. And physical well-being, as predicted, is positively related to subjective well-being. But interestingly, even if we control for physical well-being here, the effect of job fulfillment on subjective well-being is still significant. It's actually stronger, the effect of job fulfillment on subjective well-being, than the effect of physical well-being on subjective well-being, which I find it's really interesting. All right, so summary of results. WISE organization nurture supportive leadership and have a positive effect on their employees' sense of job fulfillment and their physical and subjective well-being. Yes, supported. Supportive leaders foster employees' job fulfillment, and therefore the positive association between WISE organization and employees' job fulfillment is mediated by supportive leadership. Yes, supported. And then job fulfillment is positively related to employees' physical and subjective well-being, and hence the positive association between WISE organization and employees' physical and subjective well-being is mediated by supportive leadership and employees' job fulfillment. Yep, also supported. So, in conclusion, WISE organizations do provide a sense of competence, autonomy, and relatedness to their employees that is based on an organizational culture of fairness, appreciation, and respect, and thus facilitate flourishing. Flourishing at work, but also flourishing outside of work. So WISE organizations indirectly enhance employees' physical and subjective well-being by encouraging supportive leadership, and which then fosters job fulfillment and therefore leads to employee well-being. So WISE organizations might ultimately, however, benefit their own organizations through greater employee commitment and engagement and less employee burnout, which has a positive feedback loop to their organizations, and therefore actually they might succeed and end up with greater profit. Maybe not the highest profits that is possible, but definitely some profit. All right, so this ends my presentation. Thank you. And I'm looking forward to your questions and comments. Do a stop share here.
Thank you so much, Professor Monika. I request any scholars, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
I've got a question, if that's all right.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Monika, I was, when you were talking about the small number of people that turn up at the exercise classes, that happens right across workplaces everywhere. But it made me think about the concept of spiritual bypassing, which I don't know if you're familiar with. I think you are.
I'm not familiar with that. You have to
okay, so a great example is corporate mindfulness programs, which are presented as simply having health benefits, physical health benefits, or maybe mental health benefits. But and so they're constructed entirely from a therapeutic perspective, and so it bypasses any kind of spiritual or ethical components that you would expect to see there if you were a kind of mindfulness purist, like I am, and maybe quite a few people here today. It kind of, I'm thinking about, there's a kind of lack of authenticity in the way they understand the depth of concepts, and so I'm wondering whether you think that there might be some sort of analogue of that in organisations that might be an impediment to those organisations, becoming measurably organisationally wise.
Well, it's definitely a challenge, and it's interesting. You call it spiritual bypassing. I think you've heard the term mindfulness.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. This is why the leadership is so important, and authenticity. That you actually believe that the leaders really are on board with this, and this is what they want, right? What they want is to have the best interest of their employees in mind, and not introducing mindfulness, to exploit them even more. Right? And because if there's a suspicion that yes, I'm getting offered this, but only, so that I can even work more hours or something, it's not really for my benefit, it's actually only for the benefit of the organization, then no, I don't trust you. But this is a part of the whole package, so it's not just, you cannot just offer one piece, so it's the whole package. And I think therefore job security, fair pay makes so much of a difference. If I know that the CEOs are willing to give up some of their really huge pay package and distribute it among the employees, which some have done, right? Then I trust you much more than if I say no, I deserve it, right? I deserve my millions. I need I don't know, 10 million a year or how much it is. Why, right? And you deserve, just to scrape by, right? No, right? And, you can offer me as many mindfulness classes if you want. I don't trust you, right? So it is this is why this corporate culture and based on morality and ethics is so important, So only if I trust the leaders that they really have my best interest at heart will I actually be on board, because otherwise I will always be skeptical. At the beginning employees are rightfully skeptical, right? Unless it could also be that some people come together and actually found an organization with these principles in mind, and then what some people, when we were writing this other paper, one of the reviewers said, because we wanted to have discussing how wise organizations treat aging older people, and they say, that's really not important, and I said, yes, it is, because aging research it actually matters, and basically what we're saying, wise organization value the experience and this kind of tacit knowledge that older employees have, that have been there for a long time, and they not chuck them out because they don't know the latest technical development, right? So because they can actually work as mentors for younger employees and help them succeed on these interpersonal levels, right? But anyway, one of the reviewers was saying maybe you should talk about the aging of the organization, that organizations can grow and become wiser. And I was saying, I'm not so sure. It could actually go the other way around, right? Because there might be people who want to found this wise organization. What comes to mind is Ben and Jerry, right? Ben and Jerry was kind of founded in this way, really wanting to have this benefit. Yes, we are making this great ice cream, but we also want to contribute to our community through fair wages, right? And then also to the suppliers that they have. The brownies that are made as this bakery in Atlanta that actually employs, people that are hard to employ, a lot of ex-convicts and things like this, that, and also they contribute to the community. So they have this really nice network. But then when they gave up, and Ben and Jerry, said, we don't actually want to be the CEOs, right? And they were trying to find a CEO, and they had some kind of rule that the CEO could not earn more than, I don't know how many times more than the lowest paid employee. And they couldn't find anybody. Said, nobody wanted to take the job for this measly salary compared to the other ones, so they had to break the rule for that one, So yeah, it can be hard, to if you actually grow and Google, don't do evil, and then they are growing, and here they are, right? They might do some evil somewhere, right? Because they're too big, now to really have control over that. So yeah, I think that's the challenge, and I think, David, it's probably easier to do this if the organization is relatively small, so that people still kind of know each other or don't feel completely removed, from the leadership. If you are a worker somewhere, in these really large organizations, Microsoft, you have nothing to do with the leadership, right? Maybe. Yeah. But that can also be then, I think, fostered that you do it, at each level, the leaders at each level, model this, so it has to really come down from an authentic leadership from the very top, but then at each level they also have to model this, that it can this trickle down of this morality, ethics, and then I think the employees would be on board. But if it breaks down anywhere, right? Is anybody, suckers, you do it, but I don't, because I'm better than you? Then no.
Yeah.
Then this will be the end of it because you don't believe anymore.
Yeah, it's there's kind of a regression to the mean, I guess, and the larger the organization, the more likely that is to happen. But yeah, it kind of presents a real challenge because a lot of the most significant organizations who can make the biggest positive impact on the world are the bigger ones, and they're under that scenario, they're the ones least likely to be capable of being wise.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. So we have to convince these large organizations that it's worth it. That's actually worth it, to have, a wise organization, to change it to the wise organization, because in the end it's worth it. If you can make this shift, that it's good business practice to be a wise organization, then I think you can get them on board.
Yeah. Thank you, Monika.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have one question. In wise organization framework, you mentioned about cognitive competence, which includes sort of encouraging employees to for their personal growth and professional growth and development. And in the model, supervisor support is the outcome variable. So I want to know that how is it different, because we are constructing wise organization as an index, where this may be one ingredient and then supervisor support is an outcome. So what is the difference? And second, that why do you think that this coefficient, which is 0.25 or something, why is it on the low side?
What would say it's the last one? Why is it?
On the lower side, 0.25 is moderate or little less than moderate strength.
Yeah, well, because it's an organization index. That's I mean, to answer this one first, it's because it's an organization index, so it's the average of all the employees that worked in the organization, and there is variation, basically. You see, if I had done this as the employee level, right, then it's much, much higher, right? It's much, much higher, and it's also, it might not be mediated by this. So this explains it, because you have, of course, within the organization, you have people who, probably think, oh yeah, this is a wonderful organization, and then you have other people that think, oh no, it's not so great, So it's the average of all of this, but on average, that it still makes an impact. That means it still matters, right? So on average, you still have a variation between highest and lowest. Now, the supervisor support is different, because what they were asked, and hold on, I can actually tell you directly, because I have it here. Because here they were not asked about the organization, but particularly about the supervisor, right? So we have organization, where before they are asked about the organization, my organization does this, my organization does this, I feel secure in my job, right? So, I feel that my pay reflects my skills, experience, and efforts, and so on. The supervisor support asks particularly, right, here's some examples item. My supervisor gives me clear instructions. My supervisor gives me helpful feedback about my performance. My supervisor cares about whether or not I achieve my career goals, right? So it really asks about the supervisor particularly. Now, again, if we had known, if these employees all had the same supervisor, we could have taken the average of that. But we didn't have this information. And so I assume that in a large organization, different people have different supervisors, right? So I didn't want to average across that. So this is an employee measure because of that. So that's why it's also different.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks. Any further question anybody has?
Yeah, I wanted to know something. So, ma'am, it was a really nice presentation, I would like to say first. And the way you combined the SDT and the three-dimensional structure of the wisdom. So, but you, while defining wise organization, you brought in a lot of other construct as well. So, was it from the literature review of these two theories, or so how you come to those? Because from autonomy you also that contribution towards society and the ethical, so those elements you brought in. So was it from the, yeah, that what is from the literature you, yes.
Well, yes. I mean, in some ways, what it comes from the two separate literatures, right? One literature on the personal wisdom, quite frankly, personal wisdom, and then the other literature on self-determination theory, right? And so, if this was kind of our contribution, I think, to the literature, what would happen if you combine these? And then you apply it to organizations. What would this mean? You know, but it does come from originally it comes from the literature on personal wisdom and self-determination theory for individuals, right? So that there's and so by combining it, you know, we hopefully, you know, created a little bit something new, right, that could help then with the WISE organization. I think it fits very well with WISE organization because of this competence, you know, is part of it, and that makes sense with the cognitive component, because the cognitive component is related to knowledge, knowing something, right? Autonomy, reflective, you know, by reflecting on things, you know, you become a more autonomous person because you're acting more out of what you think is the wisest solution, rather than what other people tell you to do or what society tells you to do. You know, it becomes this authenticity. And then relatedness and the compassionate component, that's a very natural fit, right?
That is, yeah, that's
right?
a natural fit. But for the other, like the autonomy, and you mentioned about so I was finding kind of I need to learn more about it, how.
Right. So that's I think I think this is our kind of contribution, but it's also not as intuitively to understand that they belong together. I think maybe the autonomy and the reflection is the most challenging of this, because I think
Yes.
competence and cognitive also makes sense, right? Because the cognitive is knowledge, understanding,
Yeah.
and that goes with competence. But think about it. If you reflect on things, so from the personal perspective, right? If you have the capacity to reflect, that means you take yourself out, right? And then the result, I think, is autonomy, you know, because now I'm doing the right thing for myself, right? Because I reflected on it and I know that this is what should be done, right? Rather than because, you know, it's a custom or society tells me, or it's, you know, other people tell me. It is, I have reflected on it and I authentically think that's the right thing to do. So therefore they are related. I feel that they are really related, but it might, you know, yeah,
Yes,
it might
ma'am.
be, you know, it's not as intuitive to bring them together.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, I think Professor Surya, you want to add something?
Yes, thanks, Monica. In addition to the conversation we had on the podcast, it gave me a lot of new, let's say, clarity. You know that I like to put myself in the mind of a potential, let's say, CEO of an organization, and let's say that a CEO of an organization comes upon your paper and he tells you, okay, let's try to apply this model that you have and see what is the index of my organization. So if I offer this and I put a link here and whoever wants to do that and with your help and Davies or whoever, what would be the your advice on bringing in the CEO to do this job for me and to give him this index that he might be interested in?
Well, I mean, you can see, if you see what's in the measurement, you can see, what would be the work, that the CEO could do. You could just, take a look at it. Okay, that was measured. Is this what my organization actually does, right? So, and that would be really, yeah. I mean, you can actually go through the items, right?
Yeah, my question, sorry, Monika, to interrupt you. My question
Yeah.
was not on the identifying the different kind of dimension of the index, and that I think they will relate immediately to that. But in terms of like now translating this research that you have done into now an exercise, which is, okay, the CEO
Okay.
wants to do that and conduct this exercise.
Right.
So what
Right.
would be the pitfall that he has to avoid? What would be the practical, let's say, ways that you see that we can do it in the best way possible?
Right. Now, then I have to say that is not my area of expertise. For that, we have to, we have to ask Laurent, who's actually doing that. Right. And my friend Jenny, who's from Finland, who's doing that. They have a consulting. They started a consulting business who actually doing that. Yeah,
Wow.
and I don't do it. David might probably know more about this, but that's the part. I do the research. I don't do the workshops. Yeah, other people need to do the workshops.
Yeah, well, maybe I can say a couple of things. So, I think Monika is right in emphasising what we broadly call organisational culture and climate, and very often it's problems at that level that would prevent a CEO from coming in and actually making really significant change. So I think the first thing to look at would be, well, what is the culture like? Is it toxic? Are people's ethical ambitions authentic, or are they somehow just superficial? So I think those are the sorts of issues. It's kind of why I was asking that question about spiritual bypassing, because so often we see, at my own university, when someone complained to the director of HR that there was a really awful culture, she responded by saying, but it can't be because we have Wellbeing Week every year. It's and it was such a dumb answer, but also, I'm sure she absolutely believed it as well. So it's not just a level of inauthenticity; it's also, I guess, a level of foolishness or stupidity or ignorance as well. So, but I think Monika's right. We should be asking some consultants about the barriers that they face in trying to implement this kind of thing.
Okay, so I think we are done with Q&A. So on behalf of CWIL, first of all, I would like to thank Professor Monika for wonderful presentation and lot many things that we are definitely going to take them forward and have more interaction and more work on that. Thanks to Professor David for joining us once again and being the part of this seminar. Thanks to our Dean, Professor Varun, for joining. And I would also like to thank faculty colleague Tanvi and Professor Surya, all other SPJIMR FPM scholars, and even Mr. Pratik Saxena. Yes.